Hi everybody, this is Robert at Scott Leroy Marketing. Today we're going to show you how to import your contacts into your eEdge database. It's a very common thing to do. We do that for you guys every day, and if you do want us to do that for you, you don't have to follow this video. That is a free service provided through your Market Center subscription. If your Market Center works with us, you can just send your file, your import file, your export file from whatever service that you were using over to us at support@scottleroymarketing.com and include your myKW username and password, and we can get that imported for you. But if you do want to learn how to import your contacts yourself, this is how you do it. Our first step is going to be to get logged into mykw.kw.com, and then in our eEdge control panel here in the top center, I'm going to click on View Contacts just to show the full contact list and get inside eEdge. Once we're inside eEdge, up in the top menu, we'll click on Contacts and then do Import Export Contacts. And then on this page, this is where we're going to get the template that you need to use in order to import your contacts. It's a very specific template. It's in a specific format, specific order, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a minute. In order to get that template, under this Select Your Type of Contact List, in this drop-down, we need to select Basic Contact List. And then under that, we've got a link here for Download Basic Contact List Template. So go ahead and click on that to download the contact list template. And if you're using Chrome, it'll show up down here in the bottom menu. And then I'm going to drag up my downloads folder here to show you what that looks like here. This is the file here. It's a .csv file. I wish I could show you this a little bit bigger. Can I zoom in? No, I can't. Okay, this is a CSV file. CSV stands for comma separated values. That means the first first column, and then second column, then comma, then third column, then comma. They're all separated by their own commas. This is editable in Excel. So if you have Excel, you can open a CSV file. And if you open it up, I'm going to have to drag this up there as well. This is what the file looks like, and I'll zoom in. Okay, I can't zoom in. This is what the file looks like here. It's got a column for first name, last name, email address, physical addresses, phone numbers, middle names, nicknames, spouse, secondary information, anniversary, work phone, cell phone, addresses, beds, baths, notes, other email addresses. All of those things are there in this file. There's one column for first name, one column for last name. First and last name don't go in the same column. And then spouse name doesn't go with the primary contact's name either. It actually would go in secondary first name and secondary last name. The main thing to point out about this template is that these columns have to be in exactly this order. You can't move first name. Say I were to cut this over here and insert it here. You can't move first name over to the right of last name. It has to be first name and then last name. And then you also, oops, didn't mean to do that. Insert cut cells. There we go. And then you also have to leave them exactly as they are spelled and spaced and capitalized. So first name here is a capital F, capital N with a space in between. So if I did first name, all one word, still with the capital F and the capital N, the system would reject that. It would say it does not seem to match the specified, template. So it has to be exactly as it comes in the template. All of the columns have to be there. So say you're importing some contacts and you only have first name, last name, and email address. You don't have any of this other information. You have to keep all of those blank columns. They have to be there. The system will ignore the blank ones, but they have to be there, even if you're only doing like first, last, and email. That's another thing about importing contacts. They have to have a few minimum pieces of information. You have to have first and last name, both have to be there. And if you don't have a last name for a contact, you can put anything in this box. You can put in a dot, which is what we normally do. You could do unknown, anything like that. But you have to have something in both the first and last name column. And then you also have to have one of these three pieces of information. So first and last name, and either email address, a physical address right here, all four pieces of this, or a phone number, whether it's home phone or I scroll over here to work phone or cell phone. One of those three has to be in the file along with the first and last name in order for the contact to be imported. If any of those are missing, the system will ignore them. So I'm going to show you what a semi-filled out file looks like. I'm not going to save those changes there. I have pre-filled this file here. with some names and email addresses. These are all fake names and fake email addresses. You'll notice these are all like characters and celebrities and whatnot. And these all have first and last name and email address. But say I wanted to add, I don't know, Dan Jones right here, but I didn't have an email address or a physical address or a phone number for him. If I left the rest of his row blank, there would be no Dan Jones in my database once the import was completed. Or say I had Jenny, but I didn't know her last name, but I knew her email address was jenny@gmail.com. If I left out this last name, that one would be ignored as well. And then say I had both first and last name. What am I trying to say here? No, say I had last name, but no first name. Last name was like, Arthur. That's not common last name, but I just made that up there. And I have an email address of, so-and-so@so-and-so.com. Just because I have the email address doesn't mean that the contact will be imported because the first name is missing. And normally when we're missing a first name, when we're doing a contact import for you, we just copy over the email address into the first name column. And then if we're missing a last name, we just put a dot in the last name column. I'm going to go ahead and clear these out. Oops. Just so that we can see what that looks like when a contact is not imported. And then also say we had a contact named Jim Beam, just because that was the name that came to mind. And all we had was his physical address. Oops. Come on. All we had was his physical address. We have first and last name and we have physical address, so that will be imported just fine. One word about physical addresses. If you are going to be doing mailouts like physical postcards or flyers or anything, when you add an address, you do actually also have to include a country, which is not what this column is. You've got the rest of the address here for address 1, and then it jumps right to home phone. Instead, you would need to scroll over to column, what column is that? AB here, and find what row you are on. This is 19. So row 19, column AB, I would need to put in USA here, or if you're in Canada, you could do CAN, or if you're in the UK, you could do UK. But it does have to have a country in order for a physical mail piece to actually be sent out by eEdge. If you need more information about how to send out a physical mail piece, we would recommend contacting eEdge directly, their parent company Market Leader. It's support@marketleader.com, and their number is 1-800-491-4234. They can help you with setting up a physical mail piece. We can help you with emails because that's free and we don't have to charge anything to an account for you. But if you're mailing physical pieces, that does cost money. So you would want to contact Market Leader directly about that because we're not going to do anything that's going to cost you any money. Say we added a contact for, let's see, goodness, Geppetto Puppet. I don't know, I'm just making up names here. And we don't have an email address, and we don't have a physical address, and we don't have a home phone. Say all I know is his cell phone. I can come over here to the cell phone column and add that in there. I just put in a random number there. And the cell phone can be in basically any format when you're importing here. You can have parentheses or not. You can have dashes or dots between the sections or not. Just keep in mind, you don't want to have any text in any of the phone columns. Say you've got a work phone number and it's something like 78946, whatever. And it says OFC after for like office, or if it says DIR for direct, take that text out because when you import that, it will import it, but then if you want to edit that contact in the future, when you go to save it, it's going to give you an error because there's text in that field. Also note that it can only store up to 12 characters here. So that would be for the country code. So 1 in the US is the country code. And then for the, what's that called? Area code, like an 800 number, and then you would do the actual number, doot, 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 doot. So if you count those, that's 1, oops, it's not doing that for me. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Now, oh, sorry, it's 13. You could potentially have your parentheses there. Actually, it's 15 now that I think about it. I just remembered that. So let's recount this. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and then I guess you could have a space there, so 16. So if you have any more than that, and apologies for going through that entire process there, if you have any more than that, it's going to see it as an invalid phone number because that's the most that you can have for a phone number. It will not recognize extensions. You can't put an extension here in any of these phone numbers either. Going through the rest of these columns, they're fairly self-explanatory. You've got, let's just go ahead and go through them real quick. You've got your home phone, title like doctor or what's it called, reverend, something like that. Suffix like junior, senior, third, fourth, whatever. A nickname if you know their nickname, middle name, gender, company, job title. For the secondary section right here, this is where you could put like spouse or business partner information. So their first and last name, suffix if they have one, nickname if they have one. And then for relationship, if you want to be very specific, you could put their name and then spouse or business partner or something like that. You've got family members here. We typically do that for like children that come over from Buffini. Birthday. Anniversary here is specific to when they bought the house. This is not marriage anniversary. This is purchase anniversary for clients that bought a house through you. So you can set them up on an anniversary campaign. Reminds them that that you exist and says, hey, you've been in your house for a year, 2 years, 3 years. Congratulations. And if you need anything in the future, contact me. That's basically what that's for. Referral info is basically where you got this lead from, you know, work, gym, Zillow, realtor.com, whatever. Work phone, cell phone. Title 1, this is the title of that first address. So this address over here in address city, state, zip 1, this is the title of that address. So this would be like home, work, gym, something like that. What country it's in. Did I take out the USA on that one? I guess I did. USA, there we go. Status 1 can kind of be anything that you want. It's a status for the listing. So, you know, ready to sell or not ready or just bought or something like that. Beds, baths, price, square feet, acres, and then we get over into the same things for the second address, title, address, city, state, zip, country, status, beds, bath, price, square feet, acres, and then we can do that for a third address as well. When you're importing contacts, only up to 3 addresses can be imported at a time. Once they're in the database, you can add more addresses after that, but when you're importing, only 3 addresses at a time can be added. Then you can have their second email if they do have one, and then an email address for that secondary contact like the spouse or the business partner. And then last but not least, you've got the notes column, which you can put any additional information into. So let's go ahead and save this. I'm going to save it, and Excel pops up and tells me that some features aren't available with CSV. Do you still want to save in that format? Yes, I do. Once we've got that saved, and you've got everything formatted properly, and you remember you've got your columns in exactly this order with exactly this spelling with exactly this spacing without removing or moving any columns. You've got that saved. Then you would return to your import section here, and you can import your contacts. You would set their status here, and this is going to apply the status to all of the contacts in this file that you're importing. You can tell it whether they're a buyer, seller, agent, renter, investor, whatever, all these other contact types here. And then if you have groups that you've already created, you can't create a group from this page. You would have to go to Contact and Manage Groups to create a new group, which is what I'm going to do. Manage Groups, this is a import class group. Save that, go back to Contacts, Import, Export, and then we're going to select our basic contact list again. We don't have to re-download it, but we will have to reselect our options here, and we're going to change the group here to Import Class. Once we've got all that selected, over on the right, we'll choose our file, and we're just going to open up our file here, our importclass.csv, and do note that you can import only a maximum of 5,000 contacts at a time. So if your list has 6, 7, 8, 9,000 contacts in it, you're going to have to actually split it up into maybe 2 or 3 files because you can only import 5,000 at a time before the system times out, and it'll tell you if you have more than 5,000 contacts in your file, and it lets you know to split it up. And then after that, you have to, oops, I didn't choose a file. you have to check this box that says, I agree that these contacts have opted in to receive email from me and are not from harvested or purchased lists. I understand violation of this policy will result in a loss of email features and or termination of my account. So that means best practice, and to follow along with market leaders' rules here, you would have contacted all of these people and asked them, can I send you automated marketing emails? And they would have all said yes or no, and only the ones that said yes would be in this import file. Now, we'll import any file that you send to us, assuming that you've already done that, because that's not really our responsibility. But keep in mind that if enough people mark you as spam, or they reach out to Market Leader or to eEdge and say, hey, this person's spamming me, or something like that, you could lose the ability to email these people. So best practice is to ask permission prior to adding them to a campaign and sending them emails. Now, if you're only going to call these people, you're welcome to do that. There's no rules about that in eEdge here. But when you do call them, hey, get that permission to send them emails as well. So just keep in mind that there are some rules that you're supposed to contact them all and say, hey, can I send you these emails, and get permission to. Once all of that is done, you've got your basic contact list, you've got it filled out correctly in the right order, you've chosen your options, you've chosen your file, you've checked this box, then we can tell it import. Now, what it's telling me here is that import failed. The first 5 rows of the import file contained invalid or harmful email addresses. Let's open up our file here and double check that. These emails are all fake. I will let you guys know that these are invalid email addresses, so the system is correct in that. But say you had some contacts in your database and you know for sure that their email addresses are correct. You correspond with them regularly, you send messages back and forth, and it's still telling you that their email address is invalid. The system started doing that roughly 6 months ago. This is February 2018. It started doing that about last fall, and we're not sure why it started doing that. But we do have a workaround for that. I'm going to show you that in just a minute. But also, say you had several contacts, or your contact list, the entirety of it, did not have any email addresses at all. It was all either phone numbers or physical addresses. It didn't have any email addresses. That error would still come up that said invalid or harmful email addresses, even if there was nothing at all in this column. So the workaround for that in both of those cases is to add some dummy imports here. I'm going to do a dummy import, and actually it's not going to, yeah, it is. Dummy import, and then put in an email address that you know that the system recognizes. We have one that we created here just for this import process. It's SLM import, what is that, 0118, so that's for January 18. We have to recreate this every once in a while once the system recognizes that we're using it in this fashion, at gmail.com. So you would just copy that information in the first 5 rows of the file. It only looks at the first 5 rows of the file for invalid or harmful email addresses. Now, another error that you could get is, say, let me insert here, and I've got a fake contact, and say you had the first 5 contacts in your list had, say you had like physical addresses or phone numbers. Let me put some phone numbers in here. Something like that. Oops. Actually, you know what? That's actually not what I'm trying to show you here. Say you had only names in the first 5 contacts of your database, and actually I need to insert one more here. There we go. So the first 5 contacts in your database you only had names for. If you try to upload this file, let me save it and show you what that looks like. If you try to upload this file and all you have is names, I'm going to call that import class, choose file, import. It's going to let you know required information was missing for row 2. And if you added an email address there, it would say for row 3 and for row 4 and for row 5. It'll do that for the first 5 contacts. What we do to fix that normally is we select everything, go to data, and sort it by, my data has headers, and we sort it by email address 1. That way we know for sure that the first 5 contacts in the file have an email address, and it will recognize that there is an email address there and it's not missing any information. But again, if I save this and go to import it, it's probably going to give me that error that, where are we? That the first 5 email addresses were invalid or harmful. There we go. First 5 rows of the import file contained invalid or harmful email addresses. So this is where we put in those dummy contacts. So I'm going to insert 5 rows here, and you do have to do at least 5. It can be more than that, but at least 5. And I'm going to put in a dummy import, slm import 0118@gmail.com. And you're welcome to use this email address if you want to import your own contacts, or you can create your own dummy email. Just know that eventually eEdge will recognize that this is a fake email address, that there's not actually a person connected to it, and it will mark this one as invalid or harmful as well, and then we'll have to create a new one. Just know that that may happen. So now I've got my dummy imports in there. I've got all my contact information in this column here so that it will recognize that those are real. So now when I import a basic contact list, choose File, Import Class, Import. There we go. It's supposed to show you down in the list here that this file is waiting to run. And it'll sit here for a couple of minutes. All of this processing is done on Market Leader's side on their servers. So it'll sit like this for a while, maybe up to 20 minutes or a half hour, depending on the server load on their end, how many people are trying to import at the same time, how many people are on the sites, and things like that. So you may have to wait on it for a while. But what'll happen eventually is if you refresh the page after a little bit, it'll change this status to importing while it's moving the contacts in, and then lastly it'll show you completed and then with or without errors. So I'll show you what that looks like in just a minute. All right, it's been about 15 minutes since I uploaded that file, and it may take that long, it may take longer for you, but it is telling me that it's done with errors, and it's going to tell me why those contacts weren't imported. It lets me know over on the right how many were imported, and then over here under failed, that's how many were not imported, and it'll tell me why. If I click on this number, it'll show me the name of the person who wasn't imported and tell me why they weren't, because a contact with this email address already exists. And that is my dummy import. It's going to show me 4 of these because the first 5 contacts were the same contact and it only imported the first one. Under that, for like Dan Jones here, there was no email address, physical address, or phone number. For the fake contacts, same for those. For Arthur, there was no last name, so he wasn't imported. For Scott, this contact already existed in the database previous to this import. For Jenny, there was no last name. Again, we only had the first name. And that'll tell you, those are basically the only kinds of reasons that a contact would not be imported. They already existed in the database. They didn't have a first or last name, or they didn't have an email address, physical address, or phone number. So once you've looked over which contacts weren't imported, you can try to re-import the file with those contacts updated, or just add them one by going up here to Contacts and Create Contact. And then to see these contacts that we imported, since we put them into a group, we can see all of those contacts at once. So we'll go to Contacts and Manage Groups. And now here is my import class group right here, and this is those 16 contacts that I imported. And you'll notice this is blue. So if I click on this, it's going to show me only the contacts that are in that group that we just imported. There's my dummy import, Bo Peep, all these names here, and these are all fake names, obviously. But that's how you can import your contacts, how you can find the template to use when you're importing your contacts, how to deal with some errors when you're importing contacts, whether it says they already exist, or it's missing information, or it's, what's that called? The email addresses are invalid or harmful. There's a really easy way to fix all those errors. And if you still have questions after this, feel free to give us an email at support@scottleroymarketing.com. Thank you and have a great day.